Right then, dudes, I've had to film a new intro for this episode because it was meant to be one episode on how to make a oak framed porch. However, it involved laying a few porcelain slabs to get me to the position of where my saddle stone needs to be for the oak supporting post to sit on. I thought I could encompass it all in the one episode, but it is getting a bit long, to be honest. So I've decided to split it into two. The oak framed episode will be up very shortly because it's nearly finished. So this is just a quick intro really on setting out porcelain slab, what mix I use, etc, etc. We've got loads more content coming up. We're nearly watertight on the extension build series, so there's going to be the roofing, windows and doors, then we're moving on to the first fix, electrics and plumbing, plastering, kitchen fitting, painting, decorating, flooring. You name it, it's going to be in this series. I've been looking at the analytics, and apparently 90% of my viewers aren't subscribed. How rude. So I know it's a Sunday, but I don't know if you can muster that inner strength just to reach out and touch that subscribe button. That would be absolutely brilliant because it doesn't cost anything, does it? Hi guys, we're going to be doing something a bit different today. Should be quite interesting, so I'll show you what I'm up to. I've got all my rafters in the end of this existing front porch / cloakroom thing. So the plan for this now is to have a green oak framework, so the beam will act as the wall plate to continue this roof to the end of the property there. So in order to do that, we've got a saddle stone there, look, which is nice ovalo mold on it. I think the best look for this detail is for the saddle stone to sit on the patio rather than fitting it onto a pad footing and then cutting the slabs around it, because it's just not as nice. I think you've seen in the previous video there is a concrete footing under there in the location of where the saddle stone is going to sit to carry the green oak post. So I have to get this porcelain patio laid to there. I'm not going to do the whole thing right now. I'm just literally getting from there to there. The annoying thing is it's in a randomized pattern. Well, it's a pseudo randomized pattern because it does actually repeat, but it's such a big pattern that you can't really notice the repetitions. So what I did at the end of play last week, no, not last week, the other day. I can't remember what day of the week is. I've set my first one in and got it perfect. So this has got, it's actually got way more than 100 mil of compacted hardcore. Been compacted several times in 2 hits. This might be controversial because, you know, most manufacturers' instructions tell you to lay porcelain on a wet bed, but I don't agree with it. Not because I'm just belligerent, but just because it don't make sense to me. So I go for a semi-dry mix, like a Screed, because you can't compact a wet mix. It doesn't work. It just flows outwards. Okay, and the more water you have, the more shrinkage you get, which I just think could eventually, you know, compromise the stability of the patio. So I use a semi-dry mix, like a 4-to-1 semi-dry mix, and I trowel the easy prime on. So that's the primer you've got to put on the back of these slabs to aid the adhesion to the bed that you've laid. If you trowel that on nice and thick, and obviously you've got your cement in your mix, that's a cementuous, and they bind. And this is rock solid. There's no movement in that. I can't lift it. It doesn't rock. I can stand on it. I can jump on it on the corner and nothing happens. And do you know what? It's so much easier to lay and easier to get your nice perfect bed, so you've got full contact on the underside of that slab. So that one's all set now. It's not at 1 in 60 because this obviously is going to be sheltered, but it has got a 4. 1 in 60 is way too dramatic for this little area. So basically I've set it out so that eventually this path is going to run all the way around the property and probably have a patio area in the back garden. At this point there's going to be an eco drain running in front of the house all the way around the building. So the fall for this patio is just on the one side line of the bubble on the level, and I've done it so that when I ran my 6-foot level down there, it touched where I want the finished level of my eco. And then when I come to lay this patio and obviously the driveway, the water will run off towards the building into this perimeter drain. I didn't bother with a cross fall on this. It'll just look messy because it's such a small area, but if you've got diagonal cuts going through there and it's a randomized pattern, it would just look like a complete mess really. So I've gone for a straight fall that way, so it's level against the building, and it starts at the top of the mortar joint on 2 bricks below damp proof for your 150, and it finishes at the underside of the mortar joint there. So when you look at it that way, it's not going to look like it's extremely running downhill against the house. My job today is to get this laid to there. Because it's such a small area, I'm just using my paddle mixer in a bucket and doing it a bucket at a time. I'll mix up some easy prime. I'm just going to try and get away with laying as few slabs as I need to get to there. Before I get carried away, I thought I'd just stop and explain a few things. So like I was saying, I use a semi-dry, and I can quite confidently swear by this because I've never had any problems of slabs lifting. So what you're aiming for is enough water to make it bind into a ball in your hand, but you don't want water running out of that when you squeeze it, and you don't want it obviously turning into a mush. So that, in my opinion, is just right. That is a mix of 3 sharp sand, 1 building sand just to make it a little bit easier to screed, and 1 cement in there. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing was, probably seen this before, cut the first one wrong, so I've labelled this side so even Tommy can't get it wrong. What I've done is, my slabs are 20mm thick, so I've gone 18.5mm I've cut off the one end. Obviously this has got the full built into it, this tile, so that will just continue that way, and I can screed my bed back and get the perfect flat bed with full coverage, and it'll be 1.5mm higher than it needs to be. And then I use a dead blow mallet, and because it's a dead blow, it doesn't skid and smudge. It's black, it's not white. You're meant to use really white, but if you use a dead blow, it sort of doesn't skid off the surface and doesn't leave a black mark. It gets so much more power behind it, so a few taps of that and that drops that down perfect then. Because this is porcelain, you've got to be spot on with porcelain. I found some tile leveling clips in my garage. I'm just going to use them just to make sure there's absolutely no lippage. Make sure you back butter your tiles. Best to use a trowel because you want it really, I would say, at least 2 to 3mm thick, just to make sure it all binds. And then if there is any slight voids that happen to be in your bed, I mean, this is a bit of leftover stuff and that is rock solid. So obviously if it's 2 to 3mm thick, if there are any slight voids, which is possible I suppose, because no one's perfect, are they? That will take up that and bind to the underside of your tile and the top of your bed. You know, you can be confident that you've got a fully supported, fully contacted slab. You want to aim for, I'd say, a maximum of 50mm bed. It uses a lot of mix, you know, but you can go down to 30, I think is the minimum, but most people go 40 in between. I like to be belt and braces and go 50. The one I laid yesterday, after I compacted it, it went down further than I wanted it to, and I didn't have time to fanny about putting more on and whacking that down. I just needed, it was getting the end of the day and I need to get this tile down. So my bed ended up being about 60mm, and my god, just that 1/900 slab took about 4 buckets of mix. So I've gone up another 10-15mm, wet it up, whacked it down, just so I'm not mixing so much, because I only ordered so much sharp sand and I think I've only got 3 bags left to get me to there. So I'm just going to go like that. That's the plan. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. This is my laying pattern that I've printed out. It's just a generic one. So I've decided to start mine in this corner there. So I've got a big 900 followed by a square. The padstone is probably going to sit on that slab there, that big 900, which might mean I have to dig a tiny bit more out of there, which is annoying, but we'll see. The reason why I haven't started in the corner, because I checked the squareness of this corner and it is bloody terrible. No surprise, as usual, from what used to be a new build estate. I think that the best way to look at it is that it comes square off this face facing you. I think that's going to be the most noticeable. This should have been a 600 square in there. So what I've done is I've worked out it's about 10mm out of square from one end to the other. So if I just plonked a 600, it's growing that way. If I just plonked a 600 in there, my margin would be absolutely shocking. By the time I got to there, would be a big gap, wouldn't there? So I've set this one in 580 from there, which leaves me 20mm of material to be able to get a scribe. So I will scribe these in when I actually come to do this, the landscaping properly at the end of the job probably. Just thought I'd explain my setting out as well. So I just got to try and follow this pattern and get to my destination over there. I suspected, the bloody post is going about there. They're on about continuing this, so there's a path to the gateway there. So I can't just do a cut there because it's going to have to continue on, and the next one's a 900. And it bloody goes into there, and the stone stops but there, and that's mud. So I'm going to have to dig that out by hand because we've got no digger at the moment. Dig that out by hand to get the last slab in, but go deeper to get the hardcore in. What a nightmare. So sorry for that, dudes. I probably won't bother filming that because it's boring, but I thought I'd be dead. I thought I was on the last slab, and now it's all gone to poo-poo. Right, I finally bloody finished it. Not gonna lie, that was a pain in the ass, but as you can see, it's going to look quite nice, isn't it? As you can tell, I haven't used my leveling wedges because they weren't, they're for normal tiles, and the wedge wouldn't go through. There's only a tiny gap, and I thought, do I rip them all down and chop my fingers off on the saw, or do I just leave it and do it with the level? So I left it and did it with the level, but all looking nice. All my spacing's good. That's not the finished position, but I just put it there for effect. Sorry I didn't really film very well, but if I missed anything, don't worry, because this is not the proper how to lay a porcelain patio. That will be coming later in the series.